Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Paodcast, presented by the Daily Pao.
This is Pranuti,
Amit,
and Purva. And we're from a city-specific culture and food site called the Daily Pao. And this is our fortnightly podcast, the Paodcast. So in this episode in Bombay Binge, we're going to talk about home food experiences. In the scene, which is our culture section, we talk about the gig series Sofar Sounds. And in Metro Station, we'll be talking about our favorite Bombay books. So stay tuned for Bombay Binge.
Bombay Binge.
So today in Bombay Binge, we're going to be talking about home food experiences. Now, Purva, you've actually been for quite a few of these, right?
I've been for a couple. So there's a lot of them actually. I've been for. Let me give you a little bit of background why we're actually discussing this. It's been 2 years now where this home food scene has been sort of growing quite steadily, and it was started. A small fry company used to be a food company that did it. Then
they did what? They used to have an event.
They had tied up with Sneha Nair, who started these Poppadam home meals, like these Kerala meals from Sneha Nair's home. She was the cook, and then they did Charoli, which is they did that. They did the Bori Thal, where one of the founders' mothers were cooking. So Insia Leswala, who founded Small Fry Company, her mom would do the Bori Thal meal, and the idea was also, I think, simultaneously, or I think Gypsy Kitchen came before, wherein Ayaz Basrai of the Basrai studio, he and Gresham Fernandez sort of started this something they call the Gypsy Kitchen, in which they...
Gresham is a chef, right?
Gresham is a chef. He's the executive chef for Impresario, which owns Saltwater Cafe and The Social and all of those. And their idea was to involve... moms, aunts, just home cooks, and their main goal was to sort of preserve community recipes, like these heirloom recipes that are disappearing. So, say unless you've taken down something from your grandmom or your great, an aunt or your own mom or whatever, unless you putting these down in a book or whatever, there's no effort to save them. So, Gypsy Kitchen was basically initiated with that idea. Following Small Fry and Gypsy Kitchen, there was Tricurious, which was a company from Sri Lanka which was curating the majority of these home food experiences, and they were doing a fantastic job. Unfortunately, they closed last year because they were not able to raise funding. They were trying to launch new properties, including a lunch service by these home cooks. And Tricurious popularized something called the Bori Kitchen, which now everybody knows about. It's in the news a lot. There's this Kolaba lady who does all the cooking, Nafisa Kapadia. Her son manages all the marketing, Munaf. And... why we're discussing this now, so while this has been going on for over the last 2 or 3 years, and lots of people have attempted to do the same thing. Now, there was a company called Once Upon My Kitchen, which did not do a very consistent job of it.
I mean, were they similar to Tricurious?
Very similar. So you could log on to it was all done through their website, and you could choose which experience you wanted to go for. Then Authentic Cook is doing it now. They have one every week. They're a fairly new company. They launched last year or early this year. So, like I said, a lot of people have tried to keep up this sort of home food experiences, and a lot of home cooks themselves took on sort of the onus of running their businesses. So instead of affiliating with a service like an Authentic Cook, or, for example, Gitika Saikia, who does the Assamese meals, she started making her own Facebook event pages and ran it on her own, as did the Bori Kitchen after Tricurious closed. What Munaf Kapadia is now trying to do is he has tied up with Insider
Insider is basically this ticketing platform run by the guys at Only Much Louder, who are best known for organizing the Weekender Festival, right?
Right, yeah. And what, so Insider and OML, Insider's very keen on the food space right now, is what Munaf told me. And they've started something called the Home Chef Revolution, wherein they're doing exactly what
it's a pretty strong word.
It's a very lofty word. Also, this whole home chef thing. These are cooks, they're not chefs.
Well, this was a big point of discussion at the little talk that we gave some time ago.
We gave a talk a couple of weeks ago, and this was a big debate. I found it pretty funny, actually. This whole distinction between chef and cook, and when you can call yourself a chef and when not to call yourself a chef.
I do think some amount of formal training is necessary for you to call yourself a chef. I mean, everybody is a cook.
So this is like a Tracurious
exactly.
Redux.
So what they're doing initially is they've put up 4 experiences as of now. Gitika Saikia's Assamese meals are one of them. There's I think there's a Bengali meal. There's a Cantonese meal.
And there's a Pathare Prabhu.
There's a Pathare Prabhu meal. So
which is a Maharashtrian, basically.
I mean, it's one of Bombay's old communities.
And they're going to slowly populate that page. So there's going to be more to choose from. And eventually what they want to do is they want to partner with venues. So just scaling these up, because you can only invite X number of people to your home. So they want venue partners, and they're going to do video content around it, and I'm assuming blogs, and I'm not, so that the idea is to scale up the whole home cook model. And
you've been for the Bori Kitchen. I'm guessing the Bori Kitchen, is it part of this, or
will
it be?
I think it's kind of good that he's not made it part of the first 4 meals, because that would be, I think, too much of self-promotion. Their meals are on every weekend in any case. They put it up on their own Facebook page. But
you've been for Gitika Saikia's meal.
I have been for Gitika's meal. I went for it when she was running it on her own. So she does it out of her Juhu home. It's a great experience, because I had very little knowledge about that food,
It's Assamese food.
It's Assamese food, and she serves you what we would call exotic, like fried ants and pupae and silkworm pupae and all of that. So pupa, I don't know, so I've been for Gitika's, I've been for Bori Kitchen, I've been for Papadam, I've been for the Charoli meals. The one I went for one recently. It's called the Kachi Memon Table. It's by this family in Bandra that runs it. It's Arshad Sumar and his wife Faizia. And they don't... So theirs is slightly different. They have a delivery service called the Kachi Memon Table. They tried the home sort of hosting format, but it did not work for them. They weren't comfortable with strangers in their home, is what they said, which I think is a fair decision. And what they're looking to do now is to tie up with, I suppose, platforms like the Home Chef Revolution or say an Authentic Cook, where they can take their food to a venue and serve it there. They would be more comfortable with that. Meanwhile, they run this service. The food was excellent. So
the Memons are basically a Gujarati Muslim community.
Yes,
and
so
there's a very large Memon population in Bombay.
Yeah, and
was it similar to Bori food?
So this is, I asked them this because it's all very meat heavy, and lamb is like in focus, so I think I ate about 7 or 8 things, and about 6 of them were lamb.
So they actually called you to their house and you got to actually eat in their home.
I got to eat in their home because they wrote to me and they said, and I wanted to order like a regular customer, and they said that, because you have to order by kg or by dozen when it comes to their kebabs and stuff. So obviously for one person, they were happy to have me over, and they had prepared stuff that's on their menu. So there was a shami kebab, a mutton keema samosa. They do a biryani. There was a halim type starter. They call it the harissa, and there was the focus for me, like the highlight rather for me, was like this. They do an entire stuffed chicken, and so it's like stuffed like a turkey pretty much. And inside the chicken is a boiled egg and mutton keema. So you see, mutton is.
I hope you took some Digene with you. I mean, this sounds
so no, it was an
heavy.
excellent meal, and they are trying to now. They were also interested in asking me how they can grow their business. So it's something that they want to keep doing. And then there's the Gypsy Kitchen.
So Gypsy Kitchen, is that held out of Ayaz's studio?
No, so initially, I think the first few that they did were in the homes of the cooks.
Oh, okay.
So I think Ayaz's mum was the first one to launch it in 2014, if I'm correct. And what they're doing now, which was their plan even then, was to have a venue for these home cooks. So the cooking is done in the ladies' homes, but the food is then presented at St. Jude or whatever venue they had planned to set up. The venue is now St. Jude, which is the bakery that Riaz Amlani has taken over. And there is one... I will be going to one which is the East Indian one, which is coming up.
Which will probably, you would have, by the time this podcast airs, you would have gone for it. But, what kind of venues do these people sort of have? Because they're essentially pop-ups, right? You're moving from from a home experience to a pop-up meal. Because I do remember that Small Fry used to have their events at places like Sanctum, which is a furniture
which
store.
I've been to, which is great, because people want some amount of, there's always this sort of desire for novelty when it comes to eating. People want to do it in, like, a pop-up format is exciting, it's thrilling for people. I think there are a lot of challenges in setting up such a thing, but then that's on the organizers. And St. Jude is a ready space.
Yeah.
They have a kitchen, they have a communal table, so that's, perfect for such an event. And they would, I haven't been for a Gypsy Kitchen before, but they did say that they would, decorate the place. And since the bus rides are involved, they would incorporate some of the cook's own life and family into how they do up the space. And they plan to sort of archive these recipes either via video or a book, which I will find out. And I think the point is that, like I said, it's not new, but there are new players that are entering the scene. A lot of home cooks are realizing that there is a market for this, and there are a lot of platforms that are giving them a chance to.
And what I think what's remarkable is that now some of these home chefs have been approached by regular places, like you've got
restaurants
that are sort of like both the Bori Kitchen and Pakapao, which is a Pao sandwich.
So it's a stall. It's a QSR in Bandra that sells Pao sandwiches, and
which is like chicken.
So like homemade kebabs. So like Sikh kebab, mutton shami. It's run by a first-time food entrepreneur called Rohan Mangalorkar. So he has been providing snacks. He's doing a pop-up at the Bar Stock Exchange for a month. Munaf Kapadia had made a run burger with Woodside, which during the
Burger and Beer Festival.
Their famous Burger and Beer Festival, which just concluded. So there is a lot of that entering. Sneha Nair contributed pickles to your Bombay canteen during a Mother's Day special, where her pickles were kept on the table. So it's exciting because restaurants are also open to these collaborations.
And I think what was somebody like you who covers the food scene, what will be particularly interesting to observe is how the quality of the food changes, right? Because you're sort of going in from when you're literally having it at your house, you're literally cooking a home meal, right?
Exactly.
Now when you're putting this outside, then automatically when you're scaling, and scaling is the big sort of question here. How do you scale, and how do you scale with maintaining the quality? I know that Munaf Kapadia at the stock mentioned that he plans to soon now package his meals almost like a TV dinner sort of type.
He is actually selling his dabbas to Bar, which is in Kurla, and I've actually tried those packaged meals. In fact, Faizia Sumar and I were discussing this, and she's like, Purva, we want to scale. We want people to try, who is the Kachi Mehman table, and she said, we want people to try our food, but at the same time, I want to serve it the way I'm serving it to you now, with less oil, less masalas, because that's how my family eats it. And she's like, for me, if I can't serve it the way it is now, then there's no point, which is why she did not go to an Ola chef or whatever, which she could have done, because she wants to be able to quality control the way she's cooking.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting space, and lots more can be said about it, and I'm sure we'll be back to discuss more experiences. But check some of these out and check out the Home Chef Revolution. And Authentic Cook.
May be a bit of an exaggeration, but there definitely is sort of a home chef movement happening.
And Authentic Cook is also doing a great job, so there's lots to choose from. Yeah.
So that's it for Bombay Binge, and we'll be back with the scene.
Hi, I'm May, and I'm a huge huge fan of the indie music scene in our country, a scene that's relatively underground, even though it sometimes peeks its head overground. But there's no shortage of talent, and I get the privilege of interviewing some of the most awesome musicians on my show. I've had the likes of Euphoria, Krish Kale, Hardcore, Randolph Correa. I've had singer-songwriters, folk singers, electronic music producers, playback singers, rappers, fusion artists, instrumentalists, classical musicians, and so on. Whether mainstream or not, these people have chosen to release their original music, and these are the people currently shaping the direction in which our music scene is heading. Join me on my show every Monday and tune in to discover the unique talent coming out of India today. You can catch Made in India on your favorite podcasting app or our very own IVM podcast app.
The Scene.
Today on The Scene, we'll be speaking to Hartej Sahani, aka Teji. He's one of the organizers of the gig series Sofar Sounds. Hi, Teji.
Hi.
Now, Sofar Sounds is 4 months old, and it is, as Teji says, an intimate gig series. Basically, why it's called Sofar. Also, the name is a pun, because you sit on a sofa and watch a gig. And because these are held
You're up close and personal.
It's songs from a room.
Songs from a room, and this is somebody's house's room. Because they're held in people's houses typically.
No.
And this is something that started in the UK, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And now it's come to Bombay, it's come to India. But it's actually the second attempt that sort of that's been made to sort of host it in here. So Teji, tell us a little bit about Sofar. And you are involved. I mean, you are the guy who sort of brings all the bands to perform on these.
Yeah,
and you got some pretty you had some pretty big artists play this. You had Blackstrat Blues, you had Pratik Kuhad, and the one I went for was actually a gig that sort of gave you had something for everyone. There was a singer-songwriter, Mohit Mukhi. There was Sand Dunes, electronic musician, and there was the Color Compound, who are a pop rock band. So yeah.
Man, I'm really glad that Sofar Sounds has finally come to Bombay, and it's a great initiative to be a part of. So should I just run you through Sofar?
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how it works.
How did it come here? Like, whose idea was it to bring it here?
So, to cut a long story short, there was a friend of mine who was in Bangalore, who's just studying there now. She's spearheading Sofar in India. Her name is Pratna Sen. And she started Sofar Sounds Bangalore because while she was studying abroad, I think she attended a gig over there and she was very interested in the concept. She's a musician herself and very, very, very talented. And she attended a gig over there, and after that she kind of wanted to be a part of it. So she got in touch with the people over there. Mm-hmm. And when she told them that she's from India, they're like, oh, this is great. So would you want to start one in Bangalore? And she picked up on that idea. And so far Bangalore is, I think, completing its year now.
Wow,
so it's been around for a year. And eventually, since so far Bangalore was going so well, they called her and said, we want to expand. Do you know people in other cities? And Bombay was the first city they wanted to hit up. So she got in touch with me. We approached a bunch of people, and after a very thorough Skype interview that we have with the international team that is there to manage and support the whole system for all the 262 cities that we have, 260 plus. I'm not sure it's 262 or 65. We keep expanding. So, after we had an interview with them, Arul Kakkar, who is the city leader of Bombay now, got selected to be in charge of the whole shindig over here. And the way it works is we find a host that is being generous and willing to give us a space.
I mean, how do you put the word out?
You can apply. There's an application set up on the page. That is the easiest. The way we went about it for the beginning, at least, was we approached people that we knew. Or people that we knew gave us recommendations, say, hey, I know this person who lives here, they have a lovely house, they have a terrace, try this, try that.
So it has to be a fairly big house, or?
No, it has to be a house that can, not fairly big, but maybe hold about 25, 30 people at least.
Right.
And we're looking basically for spaces. We're looking for a space that has character. And once it has character, then we kind of look at that and consider the amount of area that we have, and we program acts accordingly.
So you do a recce of the houses?
Yeah. So we do a recce, we take pictures, we have a team together that does production, we have a team that does sound, and we have a team that does, the curation of artists, which is me and
But what's really interesting is that people are actually willing to open up their
absolutely
homes,
no, but see, thing is, the concept is not so alien for us. It's just the bands and the music that are performing is alien because we've had Baithaks for years.
Yeah,
Right.
we've had classical and
This is
ghazal.
pretty much
Baithak.
what it is.
Yeah.
It's a Baithak,
Yeah.
but it's just the artists are slightly different.
Okay.
So people are open to that idea. One part that they are a little concerned about is the fact that they think strangers are coming to their house initially. So that's one thing we have to get them across to them, that they're not strangers. We curate
The list.
a guest list as well, and
Yeah.
there are people that have applied online, and
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting because it's actually not easy to get to watch one of these gigs because you have to go to the website, you have to apply, and then if you're lucky you get selected. So so
it's also it's not purely luck. We also base it on first come first serve.
Okay.
So when we do release the dates and we know people are keeping an eye out for it and they do apply early, it's based on like multiple variables of first come first serve. And if we do know people that have because the site keeps a track of everything, so we have statistics on how many times you've applied if you've not been able to go. So say this is the 4th gig and we know someone that's applied for the first 3 and not been able to get in, we will give them preference because they want to attend this. They've shown us over the last 3 months that they've tried to attend it, but it's not been feasible for maybe they applied late, maybe something got in the way, maybe they got through to one but they couldn't attend it, and they let us know that hey, I couldn't make it for this one, can you please.
And
So
you try and not have
we-
repeats?
We try and not have repeats, but they're inevitable.
Okay.
So we try and not have repeats, but I think with every passing month that we've had, the guest list has just grown bigger in terms of numbers. So there are more people that are actively interested and applying. So I think we went from 120 people applying for the first show to I think 300 applying for the last one.
wow.
How
Okay.
often is this? Are you planning to have these gigs?
Right now it's once a month,
And it's on a Sunday, right? You
And it's
specifically chosen Sunday.
almost always on a Sunday, as of now for Bombay. And so like I was saying, we find the host, we lock the host down, we curate artists as per the space, then we put out the word that the show is happening on this date at this venue, and people that are interested apply, and according to the size of the space we filter out a guest list and we send them the invites a week before the gig, and we send them the location day before the gig.
And
So
the
they don't
address
know
on the day of the gig.
they don't know where it
It's
is,
like
and
a-
we don't tell them who's playing.
So it's an actual secret gig.
It's a proper secret gig because you don't know who's playing until you get there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
What's,
is not the format globally,
Yeah.
because there are other cities like, say, if you take London where it started, for example. London has 30 shows, 25 shows a month, sometimes 3 shows a day.
Oh, okay.
So they have 5 or 6 teams set up that are handling all of this like logistical work that we're doing here,
Right.
and they're doing that like into like 10. So that's nuts.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a slightly rubbish question. How do you monetize this?
We don't.
So it's just like for the love of music and...
Yeah. We basically we do ask people towards the end of the show,
Right.
if they want to donate something, we pass around a bucket, and it's a kind of
are
pay
they
what you want
generous?
thing. So far, yeah, it's been good.
They're decent. But you know what I love about these gigs is that, I mean, I've only been for one, but I could tell that you've got a listening audience. And I think that increasingly we're finding this across the city, that when you get an audience like that, you're actually getting an audience that's there to come for a gig and nothing else. They're not there to socialize. They're literally there to just watch. And during all 3 of these gigs, there was like just pin drop silence while the artists were performing, which is so rare to find in a city like ours, where you have to go to pubs to watch a band. And what more than that, what I thought was particularly interesting about this gig, was that nobody took out their phone. So how do you choose? Like you said, you mentioned that depending on the house, you sort of decide on the artist, right?
See, I kind of look at it in terms of what we're going for that month.
Mm-hmm.
So, say the previous one we had at the one before this one, the 3rd edition, was at a very close friend of mine, Natasha Vakil's house. And it's a smaller space than what we usually had, but it's a lovely space. She has a very, very warm and welcoming house. And we decided to take advantage of that fact and prop up against this lovely grill that she has. And we were hoping it would rain, and it rained throughout. So that was fantastic. So that opened up these windows and just plonk one singer-songwriter one after the other of 3 very different kinds. So that was kind of a showcase of singer-songwriters. So we had Srijit Bhaumik, who is an up-and-coming singer-songwriter. We had Shubhangi Joshi, who does acoustic, jazzy kind of like jazz pop stuff, and it was very nice. She had a fantastic range and fantastic guitar playing. I was completely blown away. And to end the night, we had Prateek Kuhad. So that was like 3 various kinds of singer-songwriters, and even though they're all just singing and playing guitar, nobody got bored because it was just so diverse in terms of what they were trying to say, the way they sing, the way they play their instrument, the way they approach it. So that was kind of to show that, we have this much diversity in terms of singer-songwriters. We have these many people doing these kinds of things. The previous gig, I love Sand Dunes, and I really wanted to program her for one of these gigs because she does a lot of live layering and textural stuff where she plays synths, she plays keys, she plays instruments while she's DJing. So
a drum pad also she was playing.
Yeah, she played a drum pad which she had samples going through. That was great. And but I didn't know where exactly to fit her. So then I realized that if I put 2 acts that are kind of similar and I just put her in between them, it'll just take everyone's mind to a different space. So the first act was a singer-songwriter that brought you into a very nice acoustic singer-songwriter space. Then it was followed by Sand Dunes that just took you to a different planet. And then when you come back, it's Color Compound, which is like a band, but they're also playing acoustic instruments and singing. So it's like a variant of the first act. So it just, those first 2 acts feel like they're in the same plane, and this one just distracts you completely, and you're like, wow, I did not expect this.
And then the audience can linger and interact with.
Absolutely.
So they have breaks in between. So there's like a 15-minute break between.
So the reason they come to listen is because that's all we have to offer them. We don't have
refreshments.
We don't have refreshments. We don't have food.
It's BYOB, right?
It's BYOB for most gigs.
Okay.
But if they want to get. If no one wants to get, then we have water and we have 3 bands. That's so.
And how agreeable are musicians to performing Sofar gigs?
We have some incentives in place for them because that, like you said, it's not. You asked how it's monetized. It's not particularly monetized. The only money we make from the people that attend the show are to recover our costs in terms of, decor and all that stuff.
Equipment.
No, equipment rental. We have been absolutely lucky and supremely grateful to have Bajao on board. They are amazing. They have amazing backline. And we just have to drop them a mail saying, hi, this is what we need. Can we get it? If they say yes, they send a guy to pick it up. They send a guy to, take it from the venue once it's done. And it's seamless. We've had no problems with them and they have everything we need. So it's nuts. Like, we really lucked out on that one. And all we have to do is just put their, put a poster at the end saying Bajao has provided gear partners, and they're absolutely on board to provide, which is really nice of them.
So what are the incentives then?
So for artists, what we do is, one is we shoot a video for them and we put it up on the Sofar Sounds YouTube page. Now, since I mentioned Sofar is like a global community, their YouTube channel is like heavily looked into and monitored and looked after because they have submissions coming in every day and they have uploads going in every day from all around the world, and it's one unified channel. So they have playlists for other countries and cities, but there's one unified channel that does all their uploads, and that channel over the last 5 years has garnered around 200,000 subscribers. So, and it's also 200,000 subscribers that are people that also attend Sofar shows. So there's a high likelihood that they're, listeners, like how you have in your city. There are people from Guatemala like that. There are people from Tokyo like that. So they're all like-minded listeners that are just on the lookout for good music. So if your music strikes a chord with them, people will watch it. So that's one thing that we do. The other thing we do is once you become Sofar alumni, which is you've played a Sofar gig in one city, if you're traveling to another city and they have a Sofar show over there and you know about it, you can let us know. We will contact the local team and they'll try to get you a spot over there.
Oh, like a performance spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a performance spot over there.
Okay.
So that is the other incentive that we have. So for people that are solo singer-songwriters or solo DJs or spoken word poets also, we want to expand into things like that as well later. It's a great opportunity because once you're there, all you have to do is let us know. We'll try to hook up the local team and they'll try to get you a spot over there.
Do you have like a bank of Bombay homes already, or?
We're trying. Yeah, we have a few. Okay. But surprisingly, Bombay has a lot of terraces, man. I'm finding Bombay has a lot because everyone's like, yeah, terrace, and I'm like, yeah, barish. And then we have to wait. So once.
Yeah.
But what are some of the challenges that we had? Because this is like in 2012, Sofar came to Bombay for a very sort of brief run, right? Do you know what happened with that? And like,
no, not much of a clue. But I'm I'm guessing it's like a combination of like work stresses and a bunch of other things.
Okay, because
coming
this
together.
requires a fairly, and you have a full-time gig. I mean, you're in a band, Spud in the Box, and but you managed to, and Arul works for Deloitte.
Arul works for Deloitte.
So, I mean, it's
He's
not
just
like you guys
started.
aren't doing other stuff as well.
Yeah.
So,
No, Arul also just started working. We started in my season downtime, so I'm actually going to find out how taxing it really is once gig season kicks off.
starts, yeah,
Like
which is
that's-
right about now.
Yeah.
And so the next one is going to be in Fort, right? It's sort of moved from. It was the first bunch was around the burbs, and
I think we've alternated suburb,
there
down
was
suburb,
Dadar,
down
you
suburb,
had
down,
Dadar,
yeah.
you had Santa Cruz,
Yeah.
and now it's Fort, and it's going to be
That's
in September. Do you have a date?
25th. 25th of September is the September slot for Sofar Sounds Bombay. If you're interested, please sign up. It'll be a great gig.
Will we get? Are you assuring us a spot?
I'm saying sign up now, then we can get entry.
Thanks,
As the
Teji.
thing is, because the one smart thing we've done is because I am the one interacting with people to get them on board and artists and stuff. I am not being allowed to look at the guest list.
And by the way, they're
I've
very
just been
strict about this,
blacklisted.
I
Like
have to
you
say.
cannot look at the guest list. Someone else is handling it.
Because
Like, it's not my
I tried
department.
to sneak into the last one, and I wasn't able to.
Yeah.
And I applied to this one.
No.
And luckily my name was first on the guest list, maybe because it was alphabetical.
No, that was when we printed it, alpha sorted.
But and so
But it's first come, first
you have
served,
to
like
go
you
to
said.
Yeah,
the
that's
URL
what
is Sofar.
Sofar Sounds.
Yeah.
Once you reach the homepage, you can select a city. Ours is Bombay. If you're in Ahmedabad also has one. They've also recently started. So does Bangalore, and we're looking to set up also in Delhi, Cal, Chennai at some point, and Pune.
And if you say you're coming and you don't show up, you get blacklisted.
Yeah, I mean, if you let us know why you're not coming
Yeah,
or some
but
kind of situation, then we completely
You can
understand.
stand
but-
outside the door and listen to
But
it.
like I told you, for the previous one, we had a lot of people that could not attend because we selected a certain number of people. So if there is any reason why you can't make it, it would be great if you could let us know, so we could give that slot to somebody else.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Thanks
great.
for being
Thanks
on
so
the
much
show.
for being here. And yeah, I'm going to try. I'm going to apply for the next one. I don't know whether I can make
Yeah,
it.
I think all of us will.
And it should be able to.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So that's it for this edition of The Scene, and we'll be back with Metro Station.
Are you confused about your future education options?
Not sure about whether you should be doing an MBA?
Or if design school is the right fit for you?
Are you worried about how you would finance your education?
Find answers to this and a lot more education-related topics on this podcast.
Hi, my name is Akhil Daswani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OnCourse.
Hi, my name is Alisha Mashruwala. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OnCourse.
And we both are your co-hosts for the OnCourse podcast. Tune in every Monday on the IVM podcast app or any other podcast app you may like.
Metro Station.
In this installment of Metro Station, we're going to be talking about 4 of our favorite Bombay books. Well, Pranati is going to be telling you, and we hope to make this a series. We've already had we've already done one roundup before, and Pranati's
That's
going
right. In the last roundup, we talked mainly about history books. I remember we talked about Govind Narayan's Mumbai, and we talked about City of Gold. Both of them are fairly well-known Bombay history books. This time, I think, our roundup is a little more eclectic and slightly eccentric as well. The first book that I want to talk about is called The Tower of Silence, and it's by a fellow called Firoshaw Jamsetji Chaiwala, who went by the nom de plume Chevalier. Okay, so this guy, he was from the early 20th century. And what's interesting about this book is how the book was found. It was found by an academic called Gyan Prakash.
An author who written the Bombay
An
books
author. In
himself.
fact, Gyan Prakash wrote a book called Mumbai Fables, and it was while he was researching Mumbai Fables at the British Library in London in 2001 that he came across a reference to the Tower of Silence. And so his quest for the Tower of Silence is the foreword for this book, and this foreword was also published in Open Magazine. And I remember reading the foreword in Open Magazine and thinking, I need to get my hands on this book. And the foreword is actually more interesting than the book itself. The book is interesting for its quirk value. It's not a fantastic story per se. So it's based on it's a sort of kind of like a detective fiction, and it's based on true events. So the Tower of Silence, you probably guessed, refers to the Parsi Tower of Silence. And in 1923, this is what actually happened. A London weekly called The Graphic published pictures of the Tower of Silence in Pune. And obviously this caused a lot of outrage among the Parsi community. So now Firoz Shah Jamshedji Chevalier, aka Chaiwala, was obviously one of these outraged Parsis, and he went and wrote a book based on this episode. And in his book there's a Parsi vigilante called Behram, and he's so pissed off
like
that
Batman.
Well, he doesn't have any superpowers, but he's like this Sherlock Holmes type character. He's super smart, okay, and so in the book, an English magazine publishes pictures of the Tower of Silence in Pune, and the pictures were taken by a photographer flying in a plane above the tower. Now Behram is so mad, he decides to chase the photographer and the pilot.
Okay.
And this chase takes him from London to Manchester, to Burma, to Bombay, to Pune. And there's a British detective who's following Behram and trying to prevent Behram from inflicting any damage on the photographer and the pilot.
So it's a cat and mouse and cat. And what do you call this? Like,
I don't know what you call it, but yeah, essentially, so that's the plot. And so Gyan Prakash, he found a reference to this book in the British Library, and then they had an incomplete manuscript. You know, it ended on page 169, and so he didn't know the end. So he took it upon himself to find this book, and he finally found a copy 2 years later at the Secretariat Library in Bombay. This is near the Asiatic Society Library, and it was published in 2013. He had the book published. It was written in 1927, published in 2013.
but it hasn't actually been published until then.
It hadn't been published until then. So that was the first. And so Chevalier died long ago. And so he tried to trace Chevalier himself, and, found that he went to Wilson College. In addition to this book, he'd written a play called Gujarati Play, whose English translation is Pussyfoot.
But what are some of the Bombay elements in the Tower of Silence? I mean,
well, it's really sort of a chase that takes you through Bombay. I mean, Bombay is a part of it, but it's this global chase. And I mean, it's a Parsi book, so obviously there's.
Tell us why you read it, Prawn.
I read it because, I mean, it's a fantastic backstory, Gyan Prakash's foreword was so interesting, I had to read the book. Anyway, so the other book that I really like, it's called Mafia Queens of Mumbai, and it's by Hussain Zaidi. Now, I mean, Hussain Zaidi has documented Bombay's gang scene.
The underworld.
In several books. There's Dongri to Dubai, there's Baikala to Bangkok.
And there's Black Friday, which is probably his most famous book and about the bomb blasts.
Exactly. And also a terrible novel called Mumbai Avengers, which is more sort of
but that's
terror.
A fiction
that's
book,
a fiction.
Right?
That's a fiction.
Because his non-fiction book is really sort of, I think,
is what he's known
remarkable,
for.
And and Black Friday, as many people, was made into a movie. As was apparently Mumbai Avengers, right? Or one of them was made into Phantom. What was that?
Phantom. That's right. Right. So Mafia Queens of Mumbai is it's about women involved in crime, and these women, I don't think they were they were pretty colourful, maybe not as colourful as Bombay's various dons, but characters in their own right. So you have gangsters, moles that he writes about, like he writes about Monica Bedi, for example. He writes about the wives of gangsters, like Arun Gowli's wife, Asha Gowli, Chota Rajan's wife, etc. But I just want to pick out one story. This was my favorite chapter in the book, and it's about a woman called Jenabai Daruwali.
Is each chapter one gangster?
Jenabai?
Well, yeah. I mean, not each chapter, but there's each cluster of chapters is dedicated to
one.
Yeah. And I mean, the small ones are clubbed together.
Now, did she call herself Daruwali?
No. So she was. She
did
not call herself Daruwali.
She was a bootlegger.
Before
she was a bootlegger. Yeah.
She was a bootlegger, right? But before she was a bootlegger, she used to buy rice in bulk, and then sell it to people at a lower rate. Those guys would sell it at an inflated rate and give her a cut. So before she was Jinabai Daru Wali, she was Jinabai Chawal Wali.
She had a grain of terror.
Yeah, exactly. And she became a bootlegger thanks to... she was introduced to bootlegging by Vardarajan Mudaliar, who was, one of Bombay's sort of great dons. He was a South Indian don. And so she became a bootlegger. This was prohibition time, so there was a lot of money to be made. But the interesting thing about her was that she played a very crucial role in this one reconciliatory meeting between two gangs in Bombay. There was the Pathan gang, which was Kareen Lala's gang, and there was the Daud gang. Okay, Daud was this young, excitable gang member at that time. And basically, Haji Mastan, who was an older generation, he was eyeing this plot of land on Bellasis Road. This plot of land was owned by the Chilia community, the Gujarati Muslims. And he needed the help of the Pathans and the Dawods to get his hands on this land. But he had to bring them together because the two gangs were fighting. And so Jenabai was a sort of mediator. They all met at his bungalow.
How she managed to do that?
Well, Dawood really respected her. And
what did she look like? Does this book have photos?
There is one picture on the cover. It's not a very clear image, but it's of this woman looking out of the window, and that's Jenabai. It's a profile of hers. But there are some pictures in the books that are like, pictures of Monica Bedi. We all know what she looks like. So that's the most interesting bit about her, that she was the only woman in this historic meeting of Bombay gang leaders, and she brought about this reconciliation. But on to the next one. Amit, you want to tell us about...
Yeah, well, the Bombay book that I'm going to talk about is of a much lighter subject matter. It's actually this book called India Psychedelic, which is by another journalist, actually, who's written this book, Siddharth Bhatia. And it actually tells you the history of...
Who is the founder of The Wire?
He's the founder of The Wire.
Which is a news website.
And also been a veteran journalist. And now he wrote this book, was published in 2014. And it's about the rock music history, India's rock music history, primarily in the 1960s and 70s. And a lot of that history actually took place in Bombay, which is kind of like the center of the country's rock music scene. And rock music got here fairly quickly, even though this was before the era of the internet. But it got here more. It wasn't the American version of rock that sort of came here. Which sort of was the birthplace of rock and roll in the 1950s. But this was the beat music groups. Now, the most famous beat music group in the world, of course, is the Beatles. But also, bands like the Ventures and the Shadows. And basically, these were groups that played a mix of rock and roll and R&B. And this is called beat music. And, it came here pretty quickly. And it came here through bands like the Jets. Now, the Jets were actually school kids from my old school, Camping, and they, so they were one of the most popular ones at the time. And what I like about this book is that, you actually read it and it talks about all the places in the city that are still around. I mean, they've changed avatars, but you can actually sort of do a rock and roll tour in Bombay, and this is something that I got Siddharth Bhatia to do with me. And this is primarily in the areas of Colaba and Churchgate. Now, like two of the most interesting places where a lot of the action happened was this discotheque called Blow Up, which was actually in the Taj, and I think it's where Shamiana, the coffee shop was, or whether it is now, I don't know. But it was there, and this place is called Slip Disc, which was most famously the spot where Led Zeppelin played in the 1970s.
Which became Voodoo.
Now it's Voodoo, exactly. Yeah, and, in Churchgate, there was primarily places like the Astoria Hotel and this bar called Venice, where Bidu was one of the artists who played there. And, he was...
Bidu, the composer, famous for Made in India.
And of course Kung Fu Fighting before that, and,
right.
Disco Divani and, stuff like that. And he started his career in a band called the Trojans, and then he went solo and called himself the Lone Trojan. And then,
sounds like a virus.
And then he sort of like moves on to, it kind of sort of ends around the 70s and 80s. And I think the reason for that is primarily because you kind of know what happened from the 1980s onwards, with the coming of independence rock and bands like Indus Creed, who are still around today. So this really sort of focuses on that period, and I guess it's also the time that, Siddharth Bhatia himself grew up. And so he talks about bands like Atomic Forest that were popular like in the 70s. They are a psychedelic rock band, and they have fans actually around the world because their albums have now, you can actually listen to them online. The album Obsession and Film Themes is the two of their releases that I think are uploaded onto YouTube, and you can actually listen to it, and it's really, it's kind of crazy when you listen to that music. It's very much, in its time, 1970s, a lot of like, crazy sounds that this is proper psychedelic rock, which in a way is also sort of timeless. And then one of the places that he also mentions a lot is Shanmukananda Hall, which was a big sort of part of this whole scene, because they used to host morning jam sessions that kids used to bunk college and go for, and it was the site of like these Battle of the Bands, something called the Sound Trophy, and the Simla Beat Contest, which are these popular competitions. And sadly, no band from Bombay actually won the Simla Beat Contest, but the Savages did win the Sound Trophy. So yeah, it's a really sort of interesting book in terms of if you like music, if you like rock music especially, and you sort of there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. And you can, like I said, you can literally go and see the places that you read about. And even some of the musicians like Ralph Paez, who was part of the Savages, his son Johan Paez is a musician.
Right.
So,
and when the book was launched, it was launched at Blue Frog, I remember. And a lot of these old musicians, they got together and performed.
Yeah, well, the Jets also did a reunion concert at Blue Frog some years before that. It wasn't any sort of anniversary, but I think they just all got together, and it was really fun because you got to see all their old fans come and get jiggy with it on the dance floor, and it was really sweet. And it's interesting, like Suresh Bhojwani was part of the Jets.
That's right.
Okay. So...
Well, I mean, I'll just wrap up with one final book, and it's called Death in Mumbai by Meenal Baghel, and she is the editor
It's another book by a journalist.
Another book by a journalist, yeah. She's the editor of Mumbai Mirror. And this is a true crime story, and it's about the Maria Susairaj case. As you know, Maria Susairaj's boyfriend at the time, this is in 2008, was convicted of murdering a TV producer called Neeraj Grover. And so Baghel does a fantastic job of sort of giving us the Maria's and Emil Jerome's and Neeraj Grover's backstory. She sort of tries to unpack how something like this could happen and how Bombay had a role to play in this incident. So it's a really great piece of reportage and a great Bombay book. So that's it for Metro Station, and we'll see you next week. Meanwhile, check out thedailypao.com and follow us on Savan.
And also subscribe to our newsletter on The Daily Pao.
And follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram as The Daily Pao. If you like listening to the podcast, check out Geek Fruit. Hosted by Uber geeks Tejas Menon and Jishnu Guha, this show talks about geek culture from an Indian perspective. Star Wars, comic books, science fiction and fantasy, TV shows and more.
Excuse me भैया, excuse me.
बोलिए मैडम.
मेन्यू में क्या है?
मेन्यू में सीन अनसीन है, पॉडकास्ट है, ऑन कोर्स है, साइरस है, मेड इन इंडिया, रीडिस्कवरी प्रोजेक्ट, एम्पावरिंग सीरीज, सेक्स वेक्स है, IVM लाइक्स है, सिंप्लीफाइड है, कीपिंग इट क्वियर है, थिंग्स एंड डेस्टिनेशंस है, माय नेबर जकरबर्ग है और द फैन गराज है. आपको क्या चाहिए?
एक बार रिपीट कर देंगे क्या?
रिपीट नहीं करता हम. आप जाओ IVMpodcast.com पे और सुनो ये सब, या फिर डाउनलोड करो उनका ऐप, सब आपकी उंगलियों पे.